Hello, this is Shan, Chandrasekar, welcoming you to another delightful part of our programming. As part of our ATNs tribute to 100 years of Indian cinema, we brought you some of the finest of motion picture stars, producers, directors, playback singers, music directors. Today we are very honored to present an outstanding individual who's made a great contribution to the development and growth of Indian cinema. She's extremely well known. She's a writer, she's a director, and she's an entrepreneur, and she's a corporate executive. We are delighted to present Anuraadha Tewari. Hi Anuradha, what a pleasure to have you in the program with us.
Hi Shan, in fact I think the pleasure and honor is entirely mine. I'm just so honored to be part of this pantheon of Indian cinema people that you have here, and so really thank you for having me here.
It's such a pleasure. Anuradha, you're highly qualified. You have a master's degree in mass communication, and then you have done pretty much everything that a person can think of in the creative industry. You shot to fame with a fantastic Fashion, the movie, with Priyanka Chopra and Kangana, at that time. So tell me about, that was not your first film. No. I know you had worked before,
that's right.
But that was the one that propelled you to real stardom for you.
That's right. Yeah, well, fashion definitely is the sort of marker or the the first big milestone of my career. Though of course half my career was already completed by then. And fashion, like most things in my life, just happened by serendipity. And I'll just share a small little story with you. In fact, I haven't really shared that in other interviews. So, I'd done a lot of television work then as a writer. And I was really known for a lot of children's stuff and a lot of rom-com and, what in India at that time they called the alt writer. Somebody who didn't do the regular family drama. And I was really thirsting to do something totally different. So I just, I finished my show with Sony that was called Dhoom Macha Doom. And I was just going off for a holiday to Ladakh. Like I'm known to just run away for holidays and just travel. I love traveling. And I was just hanging, in Versova, that's an area in Mumbai. And there was a cafe near the sea. And that's where a large part of the industry, hangs out. And I just stopped, near the sea, unaware of the fact that there was an entire cafe who could be just, looking at me that time. And I was just taking the sea in, and I was just feeling really happy and whatever. And Mr. Ram Mirchandani, who now in fact heads Sony Pictures in India, he was an old friend of mine and who hadn't met me for many years. So he just saw me there and he just said, "Come here, you're looking too happy, we need to, make you a little unhappy, like, we need to give you work." And I was like, okay. And that's when he said, would you like to write fashion? And I said, oh, I thought it was already done. And he said, no, we are looking for writers, writer. And I said, great. And then, the next day I had to meet Madhur, who's of course a friend, so I just call him Madhur, not Mr. Bhandarkar.
Oh, great guy, Madhur Bhandarkar.
Absolutely.
Big name.
He really is. And I mean, I really respect him for being such a brand unto himself without being, not being part of a film family and just being from the outside. And, we met up the next day and, initially, of course, we were a little formal and like Madhur says, in Hindi, he's just so funny and fantastic. And he was like, "Mujhe laga tum bahut English type ho." So I said, "Haan, wo to main hu." But, and then we just got chatting. And I think what we achieved, or rather he achieved, was that he put me back in touch with my small town roots. Till then I was, a far more big city person had become. And I think once we just found that connect and this complete crazy love for cinema, that's it, that just happened. And I think that's how fashion, emanated from there.
तुम इस मॉडलिंग वर्ल्ड को जानती हो, यहाँ किसी भी कमजोरी के लिए कोई जगह नहीं.
Fantastic. Our congratulations to you, because fashion won many awards.
Yes, it did.
Filmfare Award for that matter.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Screwvala, of course, he was the executive producer of the film.
Yes.
And it was UTV from what I understand.
That's right, yeah.
A very reputable production company.
Yes.
So tell me about that period. Like, what was it like working with a person like Priyanka Chopra and Kangana?
So I think I go with Priyanka first. I think she is one of the most professional people that I have, met or worked with, and also extremely warm. I think amongst all her other accomplishments, she's a global brand today, and like really salute to her for that. But you could see that person then already, because this was a very focused person. For a young girl, I mean, she was that much younger then. She was extremely focused, and also what I was really touched by was that she really understood the script. I think it just translated to her completely, and she owned it, and she really worked on it by herself as well. She made graphs and sort of whatever, and she really corroborated with me at each step.
That's wonderful.
And kept checking and of course adding her bits, and I saw her grow as an actor just throughout the film, and she would keep checking with me about that growth, and I think that's the wonder of Priyanka, really.
One of your friends who worked on that film with you, I've had the pleasure of having him in the studio here with us. He did the music, Salim Sulaiman.
Oh, okay, wow.
And we talked about that film.
Okay.
And I want you to listen to what Salim said about his work.
Right. Okay.
Take a look at this.
Fashion was quite a open film like that. When I say open, it had a blank. It had a lot of freedom in terms of its canvas. And Madhur Bhandarkar kept using the word jalwa, jalwa, jalwa. Kuch jalwa kar yaar, kuch jalwa kar. Do some jalwa yaar, do some jalwa. So we literally used his word and made a song called Jalwa, Fashion Ka Jalwa for the movie. And
just hum that first line for us.
Ye jalwa, fashion ka hai ye jalwa, ye jalwa, ye jalwa, fashion ka hai ye jalwa.
Again, congratulations. In addition to Filmfare Award, this film also won 2 national awards.
That's right.
How did you feel when your work received such kind of accolades and and awards?
I'll be really honest, Shan, I was expecting the national awards for them. So, no, really. Because I thought that the girls were, firstly outstanding, of course, as actors. Madhu did a fab job with them. Priyanka, like I said, she was somebody who really owned the script. But for Kangana, it was really author-backed. I had her in mind when we were writing.
Wow.
She wasn't that big a star then, but I'd seen her work in Gangster and other such things, and I could see that she could really emote that manic depressive addictive person. I thought she would do such a fab job. So when the two of them got together, I just knew that these girls were just literally hitting the ball out of the park. So in that sense, honestly, I was expecting it. Having said that, what I thought was quite sort of, brave, I would say, of national awards at some level, or perhaps they're anyway used to doing that. I thought that fashion also, it really broke the barriers for heroines being presented a certain way on screen, and I know a whole lot of films emanated from that, and really that's just the small part of the pride that I feel for it, because I think it's the first time one was able to put flawed characters on screen who were women, whose inner landscapes weren't all petal and peach. And it was fine, and there were still underdogs, there were still people who got the audience sympathy and empathy, and managed to achieve what they had to, and that really was a first in many ways. And I wasn't thinking and aware of that earlier, but once that reached the audience, then I said, no, this really better be appreciated for what they did, I think.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your work. You did an outstanding job with the writing in Jail. So I think that was soon after Fashion, Jail came.
That's
I think.
right.
Right. So tell us about that.
So yes, Jail was actually something that Madhur and my co-writer Manoj Tyagi, a very fine writer who'd already done about 5 or 6 films with Madhur. So they already had a great comparability and they were a great team. But Manoj had taken a break on fashion, so he was coming back after a while. So they'd done some version of it, and then they felt that they needed another mind, and preferably a woman's mind. So I was like, that's great. So when I entered it, I think so there was a bit of a plot and a structure, all that not ready. And I think, which I think is just a normal or maybe a natural gender thing. I just thought we need a little more empathy in there. We need a little more compassion in the script, a lot more softness, because otherwise it was just, going to be about people men in jail. And it was also one of few Madhur's films which were not about a woman protagonist. So that's how Jail started. But I tell you, Shan, it really is one of the most humbling and humanizing experiences of my life, because we visited 3 jails for it.
Wow.
We went to the Thane jail, we went to the Yerwada jail, and we went to, I think, Arthur Road, but not really into the barracks. And especially in Yerwada and earlier in Thane jail, we were actually allowed to go into the barracks.
Wow.
And just stand there looking at people, and just the sight of that humanity around you, with those eyes, which were, some were hopeless, some were just brimming with hope, and some were I think that kind of interaction it has to be life altering.
Wow.
So I think once that happened, then thereafter, I don't know how much we really managed to achieve in the script and later on screen. But I know that when Madhur, the actor Neil and I, we stood there, we knew this was one of the most humbling moments of our life, and our hearts went out to those people.
Fabulous. You won many accolades again. You were very well noticed for your work in Heroine.
That's right.
That's with Kareena Kapoor and Randeep Hooda, and a big hit film at that point.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So tell us about the work that you did there.
So in Heroine, Shan, what happened was that we were very aware that it will be instantly compared to fashion, which it was at some level. So, so those who watched it realized that there was actually really no comparison. But we knew, I was aware, because it was about women in the glamour industry. And there's a certain expectation, which in fact fashion itself had set, a trend. And then we were going to be victims of the same trend, So I was aware. But so our start point in Heroine was that, see, we are the insiders, and we've had many, fantastic films about actresses and heroines, primarily among them being Bhumika by Shyam Benegal, which was just, outstanding. And that was somewhere, at the back of my mind that, if we can produce some bit of that haunting quality that, Smita Patil brought to the role, then, perhaps we would have achieved something. So our start point was that unlike fashion and, a lot of other Madhur's films, which are often about outsiders who enter a new industry and or a new world, and they explore it, and you see their arc. Heroine was really about being an insider already, so that was like the very first start point. Secondly, it was about a person who was very afflicted, she was a manic depressive already, and to be able, so the haunting quality about that. And thirdly, which is again with great consciousness and awareness, it was written inside out, like at any given point, one was very aware what Kareena's character was going to go through, was going through internally, and then that being an expression outside. So personally to me, it was, a script that went a few notches above fashion. It may have been received differently, but personally, yes, I found that even more satisfying. So.
Mumbai Daily ki associate editor.
Fascinating. Please describe the role of a writer in the Bombay film industry.
So, Shan, firstly, like, we expressed a little earlier, is that this is a great time for writers in the Hindi film industry, in the Indian film industries, because, we're finally getting the space and the respect and, a little better money and just, a better space in the scheme of things. So what happens is that usually, so of course, ideally one should be able to create your own script and, then you go and you present it to whichever director you want, to a producer. But that's not quite the norm just yet, because it's difficult, how you're going to take out time when you're not going to be paid for development and, sort of make a living out of writing. So what we do is often we're called as, so you're hired to often be given a one line, so it's not really a synopsis. They'll give you a story idea, and then someone like me who's primarily a story screenplay writer, then I go, then I start with the synopsis. Then we get into the story, then there's something called treatment or scriptment, as Hollywood calls it, and then the screenplay. And then a dialogue writer enters a little later, or sometimes works with me while I'm doing the screenplay. So that's how it happens.
That's fantastic. I have another pleasant surprise for you. Another well-wisher of yours was in the studio here with me, and we talked about this particular film and his role. and that's Randeep Hooda.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, I want you to listen to what Randeep Hooda said about his work.
Sure.
I heard that script and I really felt that this is a real, revolutionary lover kind of a thing. In fact, I felt that the character was a bit larger than the script itself.
Brilliant performance of yours with Kareena Kapoor, where your dialogue was just incredible there. I want you to watch this with me.
Which one is it? Where I break up with her?
Yeah, you break up with her.
Okay.
It looks so real, okay? So I want you to watch this with me.
खुश नहीं है इस फिल्मी दुनिया में ले जाना चाहता था तुम्हें
You worked with Mahesh Bhatt and one of the finest directors. So tell me about your work with him in Papa Kehte Hain.
So let me share another story with you, Shan, though I have shared in interviews earlier, how I got my first job. It's a little snippet by itself. So it was my first day in Bombay. I just arrived in the morning and, I had a directory of just numbers I had from the film, the Hindi film directory or whatever it's called. And just somehow it opened to Mahesh Bhatt. Actually, it opened to Plus Channel, which is Mr. Amit Khanna. And I'd heard because, I had friends there. So I called them up and, it's a style in Bombay that when you call, they say from. So I was thrown, I didn't know. So I just said from Delhi. So the receptionist thought I was Anuraadha from the Delhi branch. So she connected me to Mr. Amit Khanna, who's such a wonderful friend of mine till today. And, he just started blowing me up. He just said, Anuraadha, you got this, that and the other wrong. So I said, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Khanna, but I think you've got the wrong Anuraadha. So I think he just felt really guilty and bad. So he said, all right, you just come and meet me this evening. So I said, okay. Now, it was my first day in Bombay. I didn't even know the way. So I got lost. I was 1 hour late. So while I was sitting outside, I said, oh my God, I'm not getting this job. I'm getting nothing. And what was this sign? I've started with a fire, with being blown up. So I entered the place and I had no idea who I was going to meet. And literally, I came in from the door and this is Amit Khanna here. And he stands up and there's Mr. Mahesh Bhatt. And as I enter, Mr. Khanna just gets up. I had no idea I was going to meet Mahesh. And he just, even before I sat down, he just said, are you any good? In his loud, booming voice. And I don't know, I guess it was just, you're young, you're cocky, you're rebellious. And I just said, no, I'm brilliant. And, I guess I just said it like that. And he said, great, you're hired. So even before I sat down, I was hired.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, should I sit down now or should I not? And then he said, well, you may as well. And then we just sat and chatted. And, while leaving, I actually came back and said, but can you tell me how much I'll be paid? And he's like, now you're really pushing it. Just go home, just come back whenever you're ready to work. So with Mahesh, I think he just spoils you for life because it's, you start with the best. This is because he is firstly, literally a contemporary sage, with that kind of wisdom, compassion, just understanding, the manic energy. So he infuses all that into you and just tells you to fly. So, he actually let me direct some parts of the film, like, just chopper shots and things like that. But imagine I'm just a graduate, a postgraduate, just come from film school. It's, my first week in Bombay and later just the first 3 months. And I was directing chopper shots in Seychelles for Papa Kehte Hain, and that only a Mahesh Bhatt can do that.
You just mentioned about film school.
Right.
You have a master's degree in mass communication.
That's right.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
So what made you choose that career, that direction?
Again, a great question, Shan, because, in my times, that wasn't the norm at all. I'm talking about the early 90s. And in fact, we were the generation which grew up on, everybody had to be an IAS officer, apart from being doctor, lawyer, and engineer. So I was all set to be in the IFS, actually. I wanted to be in the foreign services because I just thought, great, I'll get to travel. There was no great thought beyond that. But somehow when I went to college, which is Lady Shri Ram College for Women in Delhi, it is the finest college in India, especially for women. And you get exposed to different kinds of ideologies and just different things. And feminism had just come into India, and so your political identity was getting formed at that time. You know, we've actually been to jail. You know, we've done protests against, you know, part of the Mandal Commission, protested against, you know, China on behalf of Tibet. So, you know, that kind of thing, you know, been part of, you know, street theatre for Janam Jannatya Manch. So this is that time. So what happened was, by the end of those 3 years, suddenly being IFS wasn't quite, you know, the thing. And then it was really peer pressure. All my friends were suddenly going into mass comm because it was the new emerging thing, you know, it was the trend.
Right.
And a sort of sheer peer pressure, I also just, you know, said, okay, I'll also do this because suddenly I don't really have a goal.
Yeah.
And just unfortunately for me, you know, all of us, there was a gang of about 7 girls. Everybody wanted to go to Jamia, so we all just went there. I was literally the last person, and unfortunately I was the only one who got through. So the reason why I went there wasn't quite achieved because all my friends then went elsewhere. But then, you know, like I said, a lot of stuff in my life is serendipity, and it just happened. So,
It's fascinating. When you were so highly qualified and coming into an industry which was traditionally quite different, were people intimidated by you by any chance in the early days when you were such a vibrant, good writer coming into the industry with a master's degree in communications?
Well, again, that's sort of very perceptive of you to, you know, pick that as a nuance, because it's true, especially in, you know, I came in the mid-90s, in 96. I was really lucky because it was Mahesh Bhatt who, you know, I literally landed with, because yes, you know, like they said, you know, like some people would say, you know, you think in English. And I said, yes, I do. I mean, you know, I dream in English, I abuse in English, you know, we're English thinking people. So initially it was a huge barrier. And of course, degrees were just not at all, you know, who cared about a degree at that time, because everybody had assisted somebody or the other for 10 years, 15 years before they got somewhere.
Right.
So I got doubly lucky because one was Mahesh Bhatt, of course, who, you know, allowed me to do so many things.
Again, our congratulations to you on the success of Rahul. Again, you were well noticed there because of your work with Prakash Jha.
That's right.
Tell us about it.
So with Mr. Jha, again, somebody, you know, one of my friends was working with him, so, you know, they just put me through and I met him. And, you know, I was a bit in awe of Mr. Jha because I'd seen his, you know, initial work, Damul and Hip Hip Hooray, and, you know, this was somebody who was also socialist and politically aware, and I was like, wow, you know, this man. And but he is, of course, an extremely kind and a very generous person. You know, I've really been lucky, Shan. I've just met all these generous and, you know, kind, compassionate people, and, you know, everyone just supported. And again, in the matter of, I think, 5 or 10 minutes, we were just chatting, and he just said, great, would you like to write this film for me? And I was like, okay, fine. At that time, actually, I was already in a corporate job. I was heading Channel V in India. So, you know, so I was looking at a certain kind of programming, and this was about a child, and that was not at all the kind of work I'd done, you know, before that. But he just said, no, I think you can. So I remember staying up that entire night in his office, just writing a synopsis out, because it was going to be my first film synopsis. And in some ways I was going to be judged on that. But I just said, you know, I'm just going to go for it. And I wrote, you know, those 7-10 pages or whatever. And in the morning, he just, you know, read it. He had this slight smile, and he said, well, I already knew it was going to work, but I'm glad that I'm seeing it. And then that's how it started.
Our hearty congratulations to you, because, you know, you've had an extremely impressive career as a writer in some of the most successful television series in the history of India, I should say, for top companies. By the way, we are very proud, they're all our partners, such as Sony Entertainment Television, Star Plus, Zee, ANT-TV, and then Disney, and various other networks for which you have written.
That's
some of the
fabulous.
topmost serials that we have telecast here on our ATN affiliated stations. A Meri Life Hai on Sony,
Right.
Sakshi on Sony as well, Doom Machaya Doom, I think that's Disney.
Disney, that's right, yeah.
And then Girls on Top on MTV,
Yeah.
that's one of our channels as well in
Really?
Canada.
Okay.
And then of course Savdhan India, which we telecast on ATN Life OK.
Oh, okay.
So now these are all, you know, just I'm giving you samples. You've done a lot more than this. So tell me about this extraordinarily vibrant career in the television industry.
Well, firstly, I'm really touched to hear, each time when you hear that your work gets seen across the world, because, you're in India and you're just looking at, what the country is doing. So, well, thank you for really carrying on my shows and reaching it to wider audiences.
It's such a pleasure. And by the way, these are all top shows which have been tremendously well received by our audiences.
Right, I'm
So,
very, very
hats off
touched
to
to
you,
hear that. Thank you. So, my writing career began actually just a little later. I'd already spent about 7 or 8 years, of course, I'd written 3 films by then already. But, first I was a director, and then I was heading a lot of companies as a programming head. I just, reached that point. I think in many artistic careers, you reach that point where you say, look, either I'm going to chase, a position, money, all that, or I chase my artistic dream. And I had to make that choice then. So I did. And, initially I didn't even have a plan. I just said, that's it. I have to, write my stuff and, direct my stuff and all that. So TV, it wasn't again a goal in my life. It just happened at that time because, in fact, again, something most people wouldn't know. Himesh Reshamya, who's this, fabulous music director, singer, actor, and also at that time a producer on television. So he sort of, sourced me out from somewhere, and an extremely convincing man who, said, you have to write this TV show for me. And I was like, no, I don't think that's, just TV, I don't want to do it. So he just said, just trust me, do it. And I started writing for him, and I just really enjoyed that.
Which one was that?
No, unfortunately, that show didn't get made.
Oh,
but what happened was that because of that, I met Sony Television, and I got contracted for 2 years as a writer exclusively with them, and that's how a lot of these shows happen. But he was really the person who nudged me there. And then thereafter, for 14 years, I have been a television writer. I wrote about 25 shows. A lot of them I created from scratch, and then, not necessarily wrote the entire show, but, was the series writer for, say, the first 3 months. But yeah, just having birthed, all those many shows, it's been just fabulous because, the kind of discipline TV gives you, nothing else can. You have to write every day. So.
Fascinating. You've also been the founder of a very interesting group that you formed with a Japanese name, Kosen, Rufu.
That's right, yeah.
And I think that word came from Japan.
Yes.
And that was a writers' forum you created, for the development of content.
That's right, yeah.
So tell us about that initiative of yours.
Yes, well, thank you for bringing that up, Shan, because that is my latest baby. It's what I call Act 3 of my career, and I'm currently in that. So, Kosen Rufu is a very beautiful word in Japanese, which is actually part of the Buddhism practice that I follow. It's the Nichiren Daishin in Buddhism. And so, there are many beautiful concepts in there, and it sort of really flows into, my ideology of life and just writing in general. So Kosen Rufu particular word, it has many connotations and meanings. One of them being, one is just world peace, and the other is the human revolution, which is that you kind of pass the word around.
I see.
So it just made sense for me to use it for what I was about to do. So and it's really just a year old, and it's fledgling, and all my writers waiting back in India right now. So my idea was twofold. One was to be able to give more trained writers to the industry, because I meet a lot of young people who are very bright, extremely passionate, but don't necessarily have either direction or enough of the craft. So I just took it upon myself to mentor some of them that I handpick, and the others that I set up writers as rooms for each project. So that's also, it's a new trend in India, especially with the digital content. So that's what I do. We work out of a co-working space which is green with 7 dogs in it. And with each project I have 2 to 3 writers that I sort of set up a writers' room with, and otherwise we just hang out and just chat and party and just exchange ideas. That's what we do.
Credit goes to you for being a pioneer in initiating several firsts. You did India's first silent love story.
That's right, yeah.
So tell us about that.
So, this was actually an extension of my diploma film in film school. So, I'd made this film, and it was about, at that time it was called History and Her Story. So, his story, her story, that kind of a thing. And, it won the whatever there in film school. I was the gold medalist of, my class, and my film went to the, student film festivals. So, again, when I came to Bombay and I'd met Mahesh, he saw that film later. And, amongst many wonderful things that he told me, he just said that, it's a great story which you can take forward. And he also gave me just a thing that, while you're a good writer and director, you actually, I mean, I just took his word for it. He just said, your strengths lie even better in editing, putting it together. Not that I'm an editor myself, but, when you direct the editing. So I kept that in mind, and then I met Mr. Anupam Kher thereafter, and he who gave me a break as a director. So he sort of took this project forward and said, let's do something really path-breaking. I mean, I think even today it's highly path-breaking, because Star Network at that time, which was not even Star Plus, the people there, they saw, I don't know, whatever potential in it. So we actually put it on as a 5-minute daily strip. So, my job was to, and my excitement was to create 5-minute dailies, which when put together at the end of the week became a half an hour.
Yes.
So I had to script it like that, and it's just, I'm always amazed that, the kind of stuff they allowed me as a complete newcomer, with no background whatsoever, and just let me be. Yeah.
And from there on, you also dealt with the taboo topics with Kiran Kher,
That's
the
right,
live
yeah.
talk show.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
So Kiran, of course, remains till today a very dynamic person, and a very important part of Mr. Kher's, entertainment network at that time. So now, Kiran had already featured in something called Purukshetra, which was Imtiaz Ali was very well known for that. So, she was already a rabble-rousing anchor, and it was just, it was my mantle to now take this forward. So, you're like, okay, you've already done that, where do you take it from here? So that was, so our idea really was to be, again, addressing taboo topics. Of course, nothing like what we do today, because this is still the late 90s. But, so Kiran, of course, is that kind of person, you tell her, she understands, and she takes it to the next level. So, but, again, I guess it was unconscious then, far more conscious now. My idea has always been, no matter how sensational and whatever it is that you want to do, never lose the compassion. So I think the idea was to, while we were addressing taboo topics, to really look at it compassionately. And I'll share just one, one of the stories there with you. So amongst many other things that we did, there were eunuchs that we were, who would probably be called transgender later, but, or, just a man who was married to 2 women, and he was a Hindu, and, things like that. We actually got somebody who is, well, I guess she would qualify as a courtesan, maybe, I mean, I don't even know what nomenclature that would be. But she was somebody who traditionally would be the wife in the older, days. In the late 90s, she was really a beautiful looking woman, and a singer at that. And she had come, and she was very clear that, you cannot show my face, you have to pixelate it, okay, on television. So we said, okay, fine, because just your life is so fascinating, it deserves a tribute.
Sure.
And she'd come with the musicians and everything. And I tell you, at the end of it, which is a live audience again, and with Kiran and everybody, at the end of it, she not only sang, she, just cried, and she said, it's fine, you can show my face.
Wow.
Because, so that was one. And the other was, we actually got 2 people married on our stage.
Wow.
Because it was, of course, it was rigged in the sense it was a friend of mine who I knew wanted to marry this lady, and his parents were not going to agree. So we just got them on stage under the pretext of this show, which was, of course, real and whatever. And, and then we just asked this, so are you okay accepting this girl, letting your son marry XYZ? And they said, well, we are on international television, being watched in 52 countries, we can't say no. So
Wow.
I got married. So
Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
You were also a pioneer. You did India's first live action animation called Take Off.
That's right.
And I remember that. It was, again, a very adventurous, successful venture on Sony. Tell us about that.
So in Take Off, Shan, what happened was I was just young and extremely idealistic, and when you're young and adventurous, you have no idea about what the repercussions or what you're even getting into. I just thought it was great because there was, this film called something about Jessica Rabbit. I forget the name. So that was the only live action animation thing. And I thought, wow, this is the next level of technology. So let's just go for it,
Right.
And Sony was like, yes, why don't we do that? And Anupam was, whatever, floats your boat. So I just jumped into it and then started realizing the, the sheer technicality and the, sort of, scale of it. But again, got lucky because I had, Bhim Sen, who was one of the very famous animators at that time, and he helped me out, because of course it was part 2D, part 3D. So he virtually gave me a masterclass in animation, of which I had no idea till then. And he actually looked at me, he said, you don't know anything about it and you want to do this. I said, well, I'll learn, And that's how I started. And Bhavna Bansawar, who's a very fine comedian and actress, who at that time was particularly known for, the comedy she used to do. She was my sole actor on, on screen. And there was this animated character, and there was, the camera itself was, a character. So anytime the camera moved was because she was interacting with the camera. So that's the thought.
You as an extraordinarily creative writer, you are sensitive to people who are motion picture artists, producers, directors, writers, and technicians, cameramen, post-production editors, set builders, makeup artists. In this country, a lot of their lives are at stake in the future, without any exaggeration, because of the exorbitant amount of internet piracy.
That's right, yeah.
On the digital piracy. On the one hand, we are delighted that digital is going to be a fantastic alternative medium. On the other hand, it looks like there's a big elephant that's wandering around, and somebody, who had the money to buy the elephant but forgot to buy a chain to tie it down. So it kept wandering all around.
That's right.
It's that kind of a situation whereby copyright enforcement is becoming extremely difficult on a worldwide basis. In your opinion, what would your advice be to the public to protect the creative element of our industry?
This is such a sensitive topic, Shan, because I think it really affects, exactly like you said, not just industries but lives. Because I think what I would like the public to really understand is that when we create anything, it's entertainment for you, yes, because that's our primary motive. But really, it really is a work of art in the sense it may, not necessarily be artistic, but it's something you've created from the depths of your being. It's unlike any other job in the world. So what happens is, not that I'm a mother, but it really is like having a baby. It's like creating something of your own, which a part of you is out there. So imagine, God forbid for anybody, if a baby got stolen, how would you feel? How would you feel if an unacknowledged baby, or your child grows up thinking XYZ is the mother and never having known that you birthed this, somebody else just owned this. So it's really as heartbreaking as that and as sensitive as that. So of course the laws across the world have to get stricter. There has to be a piracy police, better in place than ever before. But it's a lot like democracy. I think the final responsibility lies in the hands of the public, that you have to be as public be sensitive to this idea. And really, I think to pay for subscription is just so low that it's not even unaffordable anymore.
Right.
So I think piracy is really like an addiction. It's like I can live a healthy life, but I'm just going to do this. So I can only implore people that get away from that addiction. Have a little more sensitivity, be a little more compassionate about the work we do, because hey, we spend our lives, our nights and days in trying to entertain you, to make you happy and to reach out to you. So just support us.
You've been around the world. You've been to 5 different continents, and you've probably been interviewed by various networks around the world and television programs and studios. What do you think of what we are doing here in Canada?
Well, I think, like we were discussing a little earlier, I can just see that how you really are the center point of the cultural melting pot here, because I really, as a communicator, I understand the role of the media in the evolution of a community. Because it is not just entertainment, it's, how you keep the feeling of connectivity alive. So I can see that you're doing that across communities, not just India, but across the entire South Asian diaspora. And when I saw your building and I just walked in here, I just really, I could sense the whole passion and the whole sort of things that you built around it. So congratulations. I think you're really, you're the progenitor of a lot of things which are Indo-Canadian, and communication is just a small part of it. The things that you do, I think, are invisible. And really, congratulations for that.
Thank
Fantastic.
you. At some point in the future, would you be open to some maybe co-production work between both of us, between India and Canada, as we now have a co-production treaty as well in place?
Yes, in fact, my trip here is exactly for that. I've been exploring an Indo-Canadian production for about a year now, a co-production, and I'm setting up a story which is partly set in Canada.
Wonderful.
And it's looking at an experience from a slightly different, not the expected, what we call the NRI experience perspective, which is slightly different, because my film is meant for a global audience.
Wonderful.
So I am exploring that in a huge way, and I already feel like I'm a resident here.
Well, Anuraadha, it's such a pleasure having you in the program with us. May God bless you. Keep up the great work you're doing. We look forward to hearing more and more success, stories from you in the coming years. And don't hesitate, please come back and visit us again, and we'd love to have you back in the studio with us again.
Thank you so much, Shan. This has been a rare pleasure and an honor for me to be here. And I just really hope that, people watching this would, really don't support piracy, just stand up against it. That's really something I'd like to ask people again. So thank you so very much. This is going to be a very memorable, event for me.
Again, God bless you.
Thank you
Such
so
a
much.
pleasure.
Thank you.
My regards to your family.
Thank you.